liking you.
Oh, please. Do you want to know, ironically, who?
Get down on your knees, woman, and honor me for being a woman. The patriarchy is winning. Man, I'm not a fan of toxic masculinity, but if there ever was such a thing, it would be, in the name of women's empowerment, men getting women to honor them for being a woman. Like, get down on your knees and honor me. I've been saying I'm a woman for about a year, so get on your knees. It's great. Like, we're going to perpetuate the patriarchy and get you to do it while thinking you're actually empowering women. Humans are creative, I'll give you that. But welcome back to the JP Reacts channel, my beautiful, freedom-loving friend, where we like to call out the lies, hypocrisy, and corruption of tyrants, highlight woke absurdities, as well as highlight the amazing work of other freedom fighters. So today, we just saw an opening clip, and I want to review the rest of a clip of Dylan Mulvaney on Drew Barrymore's show. Who is this gentleman named Dylan Mulvaney, you might ask? I'm sure you've seen clips of him going around, oftentimes people doing commentary on him, but Dylan has been a lifelong woman for the past year or so, and Dylan has documented his journey on TikTok, like, hey, it's day 11 of being a girl. Hey, it's day 124 of being a girl. So Dylan's become a face of people transitioning into their biological reality of being the opposite sex. It's great. Recently, Dylan made an appearance on Drew Barrymore's show, and Drew Barrymore got down on her knees as a way of honoring the challenges that Dylan has gone through being a woman. So I don't know how old Drew Barrymore is. Let's say 45. So here's a woman who's been a woman, well, period. That's a distinction. Been a woman, but also been a woman for 45 years. And then like, oh, you've been a woman for about a year. Like, wow, that's got to be tough for you. All the challenges of being a woman, like you would know, because I've only done it 45 times longer, and you're doing what you're doing. So Drew Barrymore getting down on her knees is just the weirdest, most incestual, kind of patriarchal thing you could possibly do. Like, hey, women, get on your knees and honor me for being a man in the name of women's empowerment. So let's take a look at this whole clip, and I'll have some things to say along the way. It's also very touching. Get your tissues out. Get ready to emote.
So happy to meet you.
Dylan's kind of tall for a woman. Wonder why that is.
Thrilled to meet you. I really am. This is, it's very personal for me in a world where we're all trying to figure out who we're supposed to be. The risk.
Yes.
You know, I think right now we're leading the viewers down a dangerous slope here, Drew. Trying to figure out who we're supposed to be. I think that always leads us to who we're not. But trying to figure out who we actually are might be the more worthwhile question to ask. Not even figuring out who we're supposed to be or who we want to be, which clearly Dylan is in that category, trying to figure out who he wants to be. Who you want to be, who you think you're supposed to be, usually very little correlation to who you actually are. Happiness, authenticity, fulfillment, self-realization comes from figuring out who you actually are. You know, it's weird. Self-realizing has to do with like yourself. And if you're trying to be who you want to be, who you're supposed to be, that's not necessarily a representation of yourself. I could be wrong. I'm sure I'm some kind of phobic for saying that.
Bravery.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea how vulnerable I was even willing to get. And honestly, that day one video that I made, it was kind of supposed to be a comedy video because I think coming outs can be so intense. And, you know, I kind of wanted to add some...
Day 13 of being a girl. Hey, turns out I put on a cheerleader outfit. So biological speaking, I guess I have XX chromosomes now. Is that how it goes?
Some humor. I think that we can all learn through comedy. think you can relate.
Dude, for a biological man, this person has very little muscle. Now, one thing I don't know, which I'd be curious, I don't know why I'm curious about it because it literally doesn't impact me, but how long Dylan has been on hormones. Because I assume he's had to take it, even in these, starting off clips of his girlhood journey, he has an extremely low amount of muscle mass. I mean, like his body, short of not having a female's body, does look very slender, female-like. So I assume there's some hormonal stuff going on. That's a performance-enhancing drug. You're on female hormones. You're doing this performance of gender ideology. You're on PEDs, man. You hope USADA doesn't find you.
It's my lifeline.
Now, I do think that there was so much that came up this year that I had no idea that I was going to have to figure out in womanhood. And
you're not in womanhood. You're in a place of wanting to be a woman, pretending you're a woman, which is absolutely fine. It's freedom. Anybody has the right to do that if they want. It's not necessarily something I'm going to validate. It's just like anorexia. You have freedom to be anorexic. I'm glad you have that freedom. I don't think it's necessarily in your best interest, and that's not something I'm going to validate. When people are losing themselves, going outside, going in a direction who I want to be, who I think I'm supposed to be, escaping themselves, that's not something I validate because I care about people and who they are, and I think we're always helped when we go in the direction of finding our true self. So, nonetheless, womanhood, that's where we're at.
Vulnerable things that I didn't even know were there.
Well, let me ask you, is it true that Laverne Cox, you met her, but what
I want you to know, I don't know who that is.
she said to you wasn't what I thought she was going to say to you? What was it?
She said to keep some things private for myself.
How about everything? Just keep everything private. So I'm curious with Dylan here, if he wasn't doing this public, hey, I'm doing this journey into girlhood kind of thing, getting a lot of attention, I mean, tons of attention, I do wonder, would Dylan still be doing this exact same thing if nobody noticed? Or is people's attention and this becoming a mechanism of intention part of or a large part of the motivation? I don't know that any of that's true. I just know that's a question that you wouldn't be allowed to ask.
And I couldn't agree more in the way that there were a few moments this year where I was like, was I actually ready to say that? But now, since meeting her and having that moment, I go, okay, what would Laverne do? And I actually have stopped myself from making a few videos to make sure that I was actually ready to talk about those things.
And how does it feel? Has that wisdom guided you in ways that you're glad you heard it, or you're still figuring that out?
Still figuring it out, but I think back to my childhood self, and I think about if I was following myself on TikTok as a young kid, what would I want to hear? Or, so much of my audience is a younger demographic, and I sort of would...
I want to do what you're doing because I want attention too. One of the number one needs of kids, adults too, to the degree that we're still kind of stuck in parts of our inner child, one of the number one needs of kids is attention. Attention is very validating. In fact, it's so much so there's something called failure to thrive syndrome. Failure to thrive syndrome, which apparently is very hard for me to say right now, which means if a baby is not paid attention to, even though it's clothed, well-fed, the babies will die. It's failure to thrive syndrome. That's how critical attention is. Now, some kids get attention in functional ways, and most of us didn't have our needs met completely in functional ways, so we figure out other ways to get attention because we are that needy. We need attention. Now, when you grow into adulthood and you still have such a big need for attention, that's no longer necessarily functional. That's why people can do outrageous things just to get attention. But as kids, it might be like, hey, mom and dad aren't paying enough attention to me. So subconsciously, the kid starts getting in trouble at school. Then comes home, parents are going to punish them. Why? Because that punishment is attention. Or I'll start breaking lamps or self-sabotaging as a way of I'll become the problem child to get attention. I don't know. that that's what Dylan's doing. I just know that's a question you're not allowed to ask on the PC landscape.
Love to show transness in a way that we haven't seen it before, because I figured when I came out that I might have to go into hiding and then do all my surgeries privately and change my name.
Which he could have done that, likes the attention.
And I instead decided, hey, let me see if the world...
By the way, how much of a hypocrite am I? Just like pointing out, like, he's definitely getting attention and probably to some degree motivated by the attention. Here I am, like, dude, like this video's in front of you. I make videos all the time, post stuff on Instagram. Like, I get a lot of attention, and I don't know, as much as I think I don't need it, I'm sure it registers as significant to me at some level. So I just want to point out I am being a hypocrite in this moment. But hopefully the attention I get from my content is derived from an expression of my authentic self and my devotion to exposing truth through the language of comedy and commentary. I'm sure I'm not perfect, but that's the aim.
World is willing to accept me this way from day one, and they did.
And you actually have some really supportive, interesting followers. I'm just going to kick it off with Lady Gaga.
Oh my gosh, I love her. I mean, I had the...
Wow, that's it's the face of a woman.
Born This Way ball, like, poster on my wall, and now, you know, every video there's like a little something from her, and I can't wait to meet her. That's the best part. I will say there's so much hatred and drama, and you know, just things get convoluted.
I'm gonna mention on that hatred note, I'm sure there are some people that have a degree of hatred for transgender people. Just like any group of people, there's gonna be another person that hates them, which is, in my opinion, really hatred of self projected onto somebody else. But I think there's an important distinction because the LGBTQRSTUV community in the propaganda front of it, it likes to just sweep under the rug any valid criticism, any acknowledgement of objective realities that are that their narrative and their ideology tries to paint over, like, hey, XX chromosomes, XY chromosomes, that's a thing, biology, like it's a thing. Any sort of pointing out of those objective truths, they like to lump in, sweep under the rug of, oh, that's hatred. You're transphobic, you hate transgender people. And while there are some people that might feel a sense of hatred, I think the vast majority of folks out there that are quote unquote critical of the LGBTQ movement and the gender ideology, I don't think they feel any degree of hate. In fact, for me, I feel a sense of compassion in it, and I love these people as fellow human beings, and I accept them as they are. Yet I don't validate and try to perpetuate a toxic ideology. So, not to be confused, there is calling out objective truth and standing for it, and then there's hate. I think the vast majority of free-thinking people who say, like, gender ideology, not for me, I don't think they feel any degree of hate. I think they are simply standing for truth. And because the truth tends to point out holes and insecurities in their ideology, not invented by Einstein, so there's some freaking holes in it. They they feel insecure enough about that. So they're like, we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to have that conversation. That's hate. Conversation over. Bad people. Those Jordan Peterson, that real smart person pointing out these holes in our ideology. He's just hateful. He's just hateful, which they try to invalidate and smear the person, which, just invalidates everything they say, or at least that's the attempt. Onward we go.
But getting to meet, my role models, even you today, is like, it's the best part, not gonna lie.
Oh, Drew is very touched by that.
Let me ask you about the negativity. How have you dealt with it? And what's an approach you take? What's your self-talk? What do you filter?
Yes.
How do you...
I still read the comments, but there is so much hatred directed to the trans community.
That's what I'm talking about. So much hatred. Some, but I think the vast majority isn't that.
Right now, it's everywhere. And I think the greatest weapon that I can contribute is trans joy and comedy and talking about hard.
Wouldn't it be funny if Drew just conversation hey Dylan, have you seen What is a Woman? Pretty good movie. What'd you think about it? And the points they raise.
subjects and really intricate moments of a transition and try to let everybody in to see that, I'm not a monster. I'm not somebody that, is trying to do anything but be myself and be happy.
The best way to be yourself is to surgically alter yourself and hormonally alter yourself. That's the best way to be yourself.
Love ya.
Thank you, everybody, for that support. How do you stay on your own path? Where do you draw boundaries? Where do you find the strength to keep being the joy?
Well, I think having my chosen family and the people that I love to take care of me. But I also think there's something just about making sure that you don't put something out there before you're ready, and really just surrounding yourself with good people. It's interesting because I look at someone like you.
I like the hand holding. She's like, Drew, I'm going to hold your hand. And do you want to go into the women's restroom with me? And maybe we'll change. I'll just check you out. Just two girls having a good time. Change in the girls' restroom. I'm just going to watch you.
And I can't imagine anybody disliking you.
Oh, please.
There it is. There it is. We got. Get on your knees, Drew.
Do you want to know, ironically, who dislikes me the most sometimes?
Who?
Myself.
Oh.
Me too.
Oh. It's actually, I think that's very valid wisdom, but I have to be a jackass and make a comment about it. It's very touching.
But I guess, you've asked me now, what I would do.
Dylan is very flexible. Look at that. I can't nearly sit down on my legs and feet like him.
To combat the hate, right?
Yeah.
But what do you do?
Look at Drew posturing herself. Let me get lower than you. She got down on her knees, so she was lower than Dylan, who was sitting. And then Dylan gets down on his knees, so they're equal levels. And then Drew's like, no, I need to be submissive here. I need to get lower than you. I need to put myself in a lower position so I can honor the patriarchy. I don't know that she knows what she's doing.
Okay, that's a great question. Now,
You've been doing it a little longer than I have.
Well, it's funny because when I was a kid, starting with E.T., it was the first time I was introduced to film reviews.
She was in the movie E.T. So, by the way, if you want to find a truly mentally stable person, find someone who was a child actor and then grew up with fame and fortune. That's going to be someone you definitely want to listen to.
Which are basically social media.
Yes.
But I felt like all these reviews, and could be a Charlie's Angels, it could be an E.T., it could be The Wedding Singer, everything in between. If you read reviews, just like on social media, you are pretty much guaranteed a 50-50. Some like it, some don't. So you've got to be willing to bear down and brace for it.
That was very boring listening to that.
And I think
picking your battles too.
Yes.
And sometimes I think the greatest response can just be in the next joyous video or in the next win that you have, because that just goes to show that you are continuing on, and whatever that those people are projecting.
Dylan doesn't have much of an Adam's apple, a little bit.
Onto you, it isn't actually penetrating.
I couldn't agree more, because another thing that you're making me realize is to not carry on in spite of others.
I'm sorry, I just realized that I'm sitting on the floor with Drew.
I'm so happy to be doing this. Thank you for joining me on the floor. The floor always feels safer.
This is nice.
It's a safer space. It's just the floor is accepting. It just gravity holds you there. It never rejects you unless you're in an anti-gravity situation. The floor is safe.
We have to go to a quick commercial break. I don't want to, but the good news is we'll be right back.
Whoa, that was a little painful to watch, but I think entertaining, and of course it gives us a picture of the face, sort of the persona of Hollywood, which obviously is incredibly controlled by whoever disseminates the propaganda, because they fund Hollywood. So it gets Hollywood faces to do their bidding. So the bidding that Hollywood is doing is certainly validating, and I would dare say encouraging people to mutilate themselves. I do care, but I also don't care if adults mutilate themselves, because I love freedom. Do what you want with yourself. But what I really care about is how this is encouraging kids to do the same. Encouraging kids like, hey, you feel insecure? Well, that's probably because you're in the wrong gender. Whereas an absolute fact of childhood and teenagehood is you will feel insecure. Your body's going through changes. It's called puberty. You're insecure. You don't know your place in the world yet. You probably don't feel a sense of purpose yet. You're trying to fit in. It is an incredibly insecure time. But if we give kids an outlet for their insecurities to try to escape their insecurities, which involves hormones and genital mutilation, then kids will do that. Kids are doing that. And I think that's a very dangerous outlet for getting some kids to deal with their insecurities. How about therapy? How about sports? How about talking and connecting with families as a way of dealing with insecurities? But that's just me, and this is Drew Barrymore and Dylan Mulvaney. Thank you for watching with me, my friend. Hey, if you want to check out any of the Freedom merch, find your people, wear your beliefs loud and proud, you can hit up my Freedom shop at awakenwithjp.com. This shirt, Pro Gun, Pro Idiot, I had to think about what it says. This has been one of the top best sellers of the past 6 months or so. So this and all the other designs are right there waiting for you. But ask your doctor if they're right for you. And I'll see you next time, my freedom-loving friend.